On today's show, I'm previewing my power-rated teams number 10 through number 6, and that's Penn State, Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, and Texas. And I'm giving you my win total picks for each one heading into the 2026 college football season. Welcome in. This is Winning Cures Everything. It's a college football podcast, and I'm your host, Gary Seegers, at GaryWCE on all the different socials. This is the Monday, June 8th edition of the show. And another reminder, we are doing at least one show a week through late July, and then, of course, the content ramps up way up as we get closer to kickoff. So if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and jump in the comments. Give me your takes on these teams as well. Also, jump in the comments. I got a brand new hat today. I'm sure some of you will comment on this. But tell me who you think this is. It's a team. I'm curious your thoughts. I'm going to bet the majority of you will not be able to get it, but there may be a few OGs that know what's up. All right, let's not waste time. Let's get to the teams. All right, my number 10 team going into the 2026 football season is Penn State, and one of the more fascinating teams heading into this season, not because they lack talent, not because they lack a proven coach. It's more because this whole thing feels like an experiment to see if they can replicate what Indiana did, right? Matt Campbell takes over after James Franklin was fired midseason, and instead of slowly rebuilding, Campbell basically uprooted a chunk of Iowa State and just transplanted it over to Happy Valley. Quarterback, running backs, tight ends, receivers, linebackers, assistant coaches. I mean, half of this roster is from Ames. So the question isn't whether Matt Campbell can coach. Obviously he can. The question is whether Iowa State football can win at Penn State. If what he brought in can win in the Big Ten, which is, by all measures, a better conference than the Big 12, right? And I think that's the most interesting storyline in the Big Ten this year. Penn State finished 7-6 last season, but the number undersells kind of how weird the year was. They opened 3-0, fell apart, of course, the overtime loss to Oregon. Then you had a bad loss to Northwestern. There was a loss to UCLA there. Franklin gets fired. And then they actually finished pretty strong. They won three of their final, they won their final three. That included a bowl win over Clemson in the Pinstripe Bowl. Campbell inherits a roster that is not broken. It's just being completely redirected, right? The centerpiece of the whole transition is at quarterback. Rocco Becht comes over from Iowa State. He's got 39 career starts, 26 wins, over 2,500 snaps in Campbell's system. And that is an enormous advantage for a first-year staff. When you completely change a coaching staff and an offensive system, having a quarterback who already knows everything speeds up the process pretty dramatically. The receivers, the tight ends, the running backs, it's all things that it's a system that Becht has lived in for years. It's a system that all of these guys know. The offensive identity is clear, too. Campbell's going to lean on the run. He's going to use multiple tight ends, which is very welcome in Happy Valley. They're going to rely on veteran quarterback play, and they're going to keep games manageable. For a year one roster in the Big Ten, I think that's the right formula. And we'll talk about the schedule here in just a bit. Defensively, there's reasons for optimism. Tony Rojas returns, though he's coming off of an ACL. Alex Toch is a talented linebacker. Zion Tracy, he anchors the secondary. And, of course, the biggest thing about this is the new defensive coordinator, D'Anton Lynn. He brings a pretty legitimate defensive system that obviously improved quickly at UCLA. He moves over to USC. They started to build some good things. Now, of course, he's coming back to his alma mater. I think the biggest concern on the roster is the defensive line. They lost a ton of production up front. If you can't generate pressure consistently, the team is going to be in one-score games every week, even with a lighter schedule this season. And that's going to be where the season gets decided. Schedule-wise, Penn State gets a very friendly start. Obviously, you see it on the screen here. Marshall, Temple, and Buffalo, about a 4-touchdown favorite plus in all of those. They should be 3-0. Then Wisconsin shows up as the first major test, right? Then, of course, that's followed by USC. If Campbell wins both of those, then you start talking about the playoff almost immediately. And after USC, you've got Michigan, which is probably the toughest game on the schedule. Road game in Ann Arbor. You steal that one in year one, and I feel like everything changes because the back half of the schedule gets a lot easier. It feels like a game that separates kind of an 8-win season from maybe a 10-win season. The ceiling for this team, I think, is 10-2. And that's if Becht stays healthy, the line comes together pretty quickly, and the defense gets settled. The floor, probably 6-6, 7-5. That's if the front seven can't hold up and the close games kind of start going the wrong way. My most likely outcome is 8-4 here. Maybe 9-3 if the close games bounce their way. And I say 8-4 just because I don't necessarily trust that a Big 12 team that wasn't a great Big 12 team can come in and just automatically win in the Big 10. Right, and that's basically what we've got. Although, James Madison came in and won in the Big 10 almost immediately. But they, I think they supplemented their roster a little differently. I don't know that I've seen that from Penn State just yet. The market win total is 8.5, pretty much everywhere. At 9.5, I would lean under. At 8.5, there's not enough value either way. This one's going to be a no bet for me. It's too many unknowns, despite, a genuinely capable coaching staff. I think the best way to describe Penn State heading into 2026, this is an Iowa State transplant with Big Ten talent, right? That combination can win 9 games, but every close game is going to make Penn State fans really nervous. So let's go with my most likely prediction would be 8-4. So even at 8.5, I would lean under, but I don't like the juice enough to actually make a pick on that. So let's go with 8-4 for Penn State on this. You want extra Winning Cures Everything content and a way to support the show directly? Head over to buymeacoffee.com/winningcures and become part of the community today. Texas A&M at number 9 is one of the toughest teams in college football to evaluate this year because on paper, it absolutely looks like a playoff caliber roster. You got the returning quarterback, one of the best receiver rooms in the SEC, a secondary that, should be outstanding, and then Mike Elko coming off an 11-2 season in the college football playoff appearance. But there's certainly warning signs as well. The offensive line is almost completely rebuilt. They lost the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. And when the competition got hardest late last season, things got pretty shaky, right? You lost to Texas at the end of the season and then, of course, lost to Miami in the playoff. And both of those games raised questions. The conversation is not whether A&M is talented. It's whether they are ready to become a consistently elite program. Marcel Reed is back. I think he's one of the most interesting quarterbacks in the SEC. He had over 3,100 passing yards last year, 25 touchdown passes, nearly 500 rushing yards. Like a legitimate dual threat who, can make explosive plays inside and outside the pocket. But he needs to clean up the interceptions, stop forcing throws in critical situations, and take the next step as a decision maker. When you look at the late season losses, the inconsistency started to show up. If Reed gets to the next level, A&M becomes a different team. And the smartest way that you can help a quarterback in that situation is give him a receiver room that might be the best that they've had in College Station. Mario Craver returns after he earned all SEC honors. Ashton Bethel-Roman is a proven weapon. And they landed Isaiah Horton from Alabama in the portal. Like, that addition alone is pretty massive. You pair those guys with Reed's mobility, and you got a genuinely dangerous passing attack so long as Reed can find the guys. Reuben Owens II returns. He anchors the backfield. Weapons are there. The problem is the offensive line. We have no idea what to expect here. You've got 4 NFL linemen gone. Mark Nabu Jr. is the only returning starter. And A&M did attack the portal. Took Wilkin Formby from Alabama, Tyree Adams from LSU, along with multiple guys with SEC experience. But adding talent and building chemistry are two different things. I feel like the offensive line is the biggest issue for the majority of teams in the top 20 right now. If the line doesn't gel fast, everything becomes just significantly harder, right? Shorter windows downfield, less effective run game, and Reed taking hits that he shouldn't be taking. Defensively, it's a Mike Elko defense, right? Like I think the group has a real shot at being good again. The secondary is elite. You got guys like Marcus Ratcliffe, Dalton Brooks, and Des Ricks all back. They finished 3rd in SEC in pass defense last season. Now, some of that had to do with the schedule, but they should continue to play at a high level this season. The question for this team is replacing Cassius Howell. Defensive Player of the Year in the SEC. You don't just replace a guy like that. Marco Jones needs a big leap, and Anto Saka. He was added to help the pass rush, but until somebody proves they can generate consistent pressure, the question mark stays on the board, right? Ray Coney from Tulsa, he's a nice addition at linebacker to help against the run, but the pass rush is the thing. Holman Wiggins takes over the offense from Colin Klein. You'll probably see more spread concepts, I would imagine, more emphasis on getting playmakers in space, and less of the heavy tight end usage from a year ago. And they've got more weapons at receiver, so you don't have to necessarily rely on your tight ends as much. Schedule-wise, let's look at this thing. A&M should start 3-0. You got Missouri State, you got Arizona State, and you got Kentucky all at home. But then you got your road trip to LSU in Week 4. Now, LSU will be coming off of that emotional road trip to Oxford, the homecoming for Lane Kiffin, if you will. That game is going to be enormous for them. Win that, and of course, you start talking CFP again. You lose that, and of course, there's no more margin for error at that point. The back end of the schedule is pretty brutal. You've got at Alabama in Week 8. Then you got a bye week. Then you play South Carolina, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Texas. And it's one of the hardest closing stretches in the country. Like, if you can go 3-2 in those 5 games, that's probably the whole season right there. But you would still need that win over LSU as well. The ceiling for this team, probably 11-1. SEC championship contender, and that's assuming that the lines come together and Reed takes the next step. Floor is 8-4. If the line and the pass rush both disappoint, Reed doesn't take that next step, etc. My most likely outcome here, my prediction on it is 9-3. The win total is sitting at 8.5. The over is available around even money. I would lean the over, and that's mostly just because I trust Mike Oko. Like, he has built a real culture there, recruited well, shown he can compete at the SEC's highest level. And A&M, they've got the quarterback, they've got the weapons, they got the secondary. Now I guess we got to find out if they have the trenches to be able to compete for championships. And I think the biggest question is, can you beat Texas? That's the biggest question right now. I think they probably can, but it's going to be difficult. It's certainly going to be difficult. That back half of the schedule does not set up well. So you're going to have to get off to a hot start in College Station.
Are you tired of sore knees or joints slowing you down? Go Sleeves uses built-in kinesiology tape technology to give you support, reduce pain, and help you recover faster. Use code WCE for 15% off over at GoSleeves.com.
The Alabama Crimson Tide come in at number 8 in my power ratings, and this is another incredibly difficult team to figure out heading into 2026. And I know that sounds strange. Usually the conversation starts with national championship expectations and works backwards in Tuscaloosa, but this year certainly feels different, not because the talent disappeared, but because for maybe the first time under Kalen DeBoer, there are actual questions in places that Alabama fans are not used to having questions. Quarterback, offensive line, run game, inside linebacker. Just places that are normally givens, we don't know exactly what to expect. Now, before we get too dark, let's acknowledge what the program did last year, right? Alabama went 11-4, reached the SEC championship game, made the college football playoff, got a win in the playoff on the road at Oklahoma, and they beat Georgia in Athens last year. Like, most programs would hang a banner. But the ugly opener against Florida State, the loss at home to Oklahoma in the middle of the year, the loss to Georgia in the SEC championship game, got just demolished in that game, and then getting blown out by Indiana in the Rose Bowl, all of them left pretty bad tastes in Alabama fans' mouths. I will say that. The feeling around the program is, I guess you could say, unfinished business. I think that's fair. The biggest story on offense is the quarterback battle. Austin Mack and Keelon Russell. Matt gives you, I guess, stability. He knows the system well. He's worked with Grubb and DeBoer for years now. It feels like he would be the safe choice, but Russell is the guy that everybody's talking about, and I would think for good reason. His mobility, arm talent, What he did in the spring game, his ability to create outside structure that could cover up some of the problems elsewhere on this offense. If Russell is ready early, Alabama becomes significantly more dangerous. If the competition bleeds into October, things could certainly get messy because you've got an easy opening to the schedule, but there's losable games there. Road game at Kentucky, game against South Carolina. Florida State, of course, beat them last year. Not easy. The offensive line, I think, is the biggest concern on the entire roster. Proctor's gone. Parker Brailsford, the center, is gone. Alabama brought in Race Ilgadi from Cal Poly and Javen James from Mississippi State. They hired Adrian Clem as the new offensive line coach to fix the room, but adding bodies is not the same as fixing a unit. Although they did, I think it was 8 of the top 10 guys are gone from last year because they just wanted to revamp this whole thing. And they certainly brought in a lot of talent. It's not a lot of experienced talent, though. Last year, this offense averaged 3.4 yards per carry. Like 3.4. That is not Alabama football, and I think that's the single most alarming stat on the entire roster. At receiver, obviously, you've still got talent. Ryan Coleman-Williams, he's got to bounce back. He had too many drops in his sophomore year. Latzir Brooks is back. Derek Meadows and Rico Scott and Cedarian Morgan, they all add upside here. If the quarterback gets settled fast, the receiver room, it certainly can be one of the best in the conference, maybe in the country. Defensively, I think this is where you trust this part. Like, you trust this side of the ball more than the offense right now. Secondary might be the best position group on the entire roster, might be the best in the country. Xavier Brown looks like a future first-round pick. Keon Sabb, the former Michigan transfer, and then Bray Hubbard, they're both back. Kane Womack has enough talent in the back end to be creative with his coverages. Like, the pass rush has got intriguing pieces. Yonsei Pierre feels like the next great Alabama edge. He certainly showed flashes of it last season. Devin Tompkins coming over from USC. And then, of course, you've got from South Carolina, Desmond Ulmiozulu. Probably didn't say that right, but you guys can correct me in the comments. You've got real options there. The front got noticeably bigger through the portal. Alabama got pushed around physically in some pretty key games last year. And the fact, I mean, the Rose Bowl was just the key to the whole thing. Like, they ran the ball. Indiana ran the ball on Alabama 50 times. That is outrageous. The concern right now, I think, is inside linebacker. Caleb Woodson comes in from Virginia Tech. He should help immediately. But beyond him, I mean, there's a lot of unproven players who are going to be asked to play meaningful SEC snaps. And that kind of stuff gets exposed pretty quickly in this conference. As far as the schedule, we talked about the early part, the early runway there. ECU, Kentucky, Florida State, South Carolina, Mississippi State. You should be able to stack wins there while you figure out the quarterback and the offensive line. But the season changes pretty quick once you get into October. Georgia comes to town, road game at Tennessee, Texas A&M. Then you got your bye and a road game to LSU. Those 4 games are the entire season. Like, you win 3 and you're a playoff team. You split them and you're still alive. You go 1-3 and you're fighting just to reach, 9 wins? So the ceiling for this team is probably 11-1. There's going to be a loss in there somewhere. If Russell wins the job early and the line stabilizes and then that defense continues to play top 10 football the way that we know that they can, that's how you get to 11 wins. The floor is probably 8-4. And that's if the trenches stay messy and the quarterback battle drags on and whatnot. My most likely outcome here is 9-3. And that would be, you lose to Georgia, you lose to either, or you would end up losing 2 of the games to Tennessee, Texas A&M, or LSU, or you just lose one to South Carolina or Kentucky or somebody that you're not expecting, right? The win total sits at 8.5. I lean over. Not because I think the team is elite, but I think they still have too much talent, too much defensive continuity, and too manageable of an early schedule to completely fall apart. I've got them favorites in every game on the schedule. I've got 4 toss-ups. Their conference strength of schedule is number 16 in a 16-team conference. So this is the easiest schedule in the SEC, but it's also the number 17 schedule in the country. So that should give you an idea of what we're looking at here. The best way, I think, to describe this team heading into 2026, they are talented enough to make the playoff, flawed enough that every major SEC game is going to feel like a four-quarter stress test. So 9-3 sounds reasonable, and with a win total at 8.5, even juiced over, I still feel good about that.
If you can't watch the show live, no problem. Subscribe to the Winning Cures Everything audio podcast and never miss an episode. Of course, make sure that you leave a 5-star review, and don't forget, it's available everywhere you get podcasts. Shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. The latest WCE merch is now available. Support and rep your favorite college football show today. Just visit winningcureseverything.com/store. The Georgia Bulldogs come in at number 7, and they enter 2026 in a spot that most programs would be dreaming about, right? They won the SEC the last 2 years. They've earned a first-round bye in the college football playoff. Last year, they finished 12-2, and somehow the feeling around this program is that it was not enough. Because at Georgia, the standard is not winning the SEC anymore. The standard is winning the whole damn thing. And for the second straight season, a championship-caliber roster came up short in the playoff. Now, last year, it was Ole Miss that ended the run in the Sugar Bowl. But the fact that it was against Ole Miss without Lane Kiffin and an Ole Miss team that you had already beaten during the season, I mean, that's a salty taste. It really is. And the year before was a similar story. Great regular season, conference title, playoff disappointment. Now, granted, at least with that one, you were dealing with our quarterback got hurt, right? What makes 2026 so compelling is the roster is loaded, the schedule is friendly, the defense should be elite, and the run game should be elite. But everything kind of circles back to this one question, and that's whether or not Gunner Stockton can elevate Georgia from a playoff team to a national champion. Let's go on and start with what makes this team so good. Stockton returns for his second year as the starter. Nate Frazier is back as the leading running back. Chauncey Bowens is back. The offensive line returns multiple experienced starters. The tight end room might be the deepest position group on the entire roster. You've got Lawson Lucky. You've got Elias Williams, Ethan Barber, Jaden Riddell. Georgia can feature tight ends heavily and lean on the run game while the passing game develops a little more. Backfield depth is absolutely ridiculous. Dante Dowdle comes in as a physical, short yardage hammer. Bo Walker and Dwight Phillips Jr. add some more depth behind Frazier and Bowens. The run game is set up to be elite this year. Defensively, the experience is even more impressive. Georgia brings back 21 defenders who all played meaningful football last season. The linebacker room alone is just absurd. You got Raylan Wilson, Chris Cole, Justin Williams, Zayden Walker. I mean, that group has a real case to be the best linebacker unit in college football. The secondary is pretty loaded as well. KJ Bolden, one of the premier safeties in the country. Ellis Robinson, the fourth. He's primed to become the next great Georgia corner. And Kirby Smart added a bunch of guys, right? Khalil Barnes, Jamarlee Riddle, Gentry Williams, Braylon Connolly through the portal. But the one thing that Georgia has to fix is the pass rush. Bulldogs finished dead last in the SEC with only 20 sacks last season. And that's almost impossible to believe when you're talking about Georgia football. It's why hiring Larry Knight to coach the outside linebackers is maybe one of the most important offseason moves in the entire conference. You get even average improvement there, and this defense is absolutely going to be one of the best in the country. Now, back over to the offense, because here's the real question mark. Wide receiver. Zachariah Branch is gone. He set Georgia's single-season receptions record with 81 catches. Outside of London Humphreys, most of the proven production at receiver has walked out the door. Isaiah Canyon from Georgia Tech arrives coming in from the portal, but this is a younger, less proven receiver room than what Georgia has typically had during its championship runs, and that's not saying that they had a whole lot to begin with the receivers. And, of course, all of this brings us back to Stockton because he's the variable that makes the whole team either really good or truly terrifying. At his best, he looks like a quarterback capable of leading Georgia to a title. At his worst, I mean, there's moments where he misses shots downfield, he hesitates over the middle, he takes unnecessary hits. Like, the talent is obvious. There's certainly flashes of brilliance, but the consistency still has to show up. Schedule-wise, Georgia gets a pretty friendly draw here. Heavy favorites against Tennessee State, Western Kentucky, Arkansas,
Vanderbilt, Missouri, and Georgia Tech. And then South Carolina, I think they're going to be pretty big favorites there as well. Probably against Auburn also. Oklahoma they come into Athens early. That's kind of a measuring stick game in week 4. Florida is always Florida. The season really comes down to 2 road trips, and that's at Alabama and at Ole Miss. You win both of those, and you're 12-0 is probably in play there. You split them, 11-1 still really realistic. Even losing both of those, that still leaves Georgia in playoff contention. Like, that's how good the schedule sets up. So the ceiling for this team, probably 12-0. Like, if Stockton takes another step, if receivers develop, the pass rush arrives, I mean, you're looking at a team that absolutely could play for a national championship. The floor, I think, is lower than most people would believe. Like, if the pass rush stays average, and that's if you want to call last season average, but if the pass rush doesn't improve, if the receivers struggle to get open, if Stockton stays inconsistent, there's a couple of games that could certainly slip away. I don't think that's the likely outcome here, but would it shock you if Oklahoma beats Georgia? Probably not. If Alabama or this new version of Florida or Ole Miss or either a road game to South Carolina or Georgia Tech, Georgia Tech would probably surprise me. But there's certainly losable games on the schedule, which any SEC schedule is going to have. My most likely outcome here is 10-2. The win total is at 9.5. It's juiced pretty heavy to the over. I lean the over, but the price matters, and it is heavy in some spots. But just from a pure football standpoint, Georgia checks almost every box. They've got elite coaching, they got elite defense, an experienced quarterback, a really strong offensive line, a great running game, a manageable schedule, like all these reasons why they should absolutely hit 10 wins. The biggest question here isn't whether Georgia makes the playoff. I think the biggest question is whether Stockton can turn a playoff caliber team into a national championship team, because the roster is good enough to win the whole thing if he can step up. So I'm looking at 10-2, and then we'll see what they do in the playoff. Hit that subscribe button and make sure to like the video. And if you're listening to the podcast, of course, make sure and visit Winning Cures Everything on YouTube at youtube.com/winningcureseverything so you don't miss any of our college football coverage this season. The Texas Longhorns come in at number 6 for me, and they enter 2026 with a simple expectation, and I think that's national championship or bust. And that's not hyperbole, right? That is the entire conversation in Austin. And if you look at this roster, the coaching staff, where they've made some changes, the schedule, and especially this quarterback, it's kind of hard to argue against it. This feels like the season that Sark has been building toward. Arch Manning is back at quarterback. The roster is loaded. The portal additions addressed real needs. And unlike last year, there's not many excuses left. Right? Last season started with national title hype and ended 10-3 with no playoff appearance. For most schools, that's a great year. At Texas, you got a Manning back there. That's a disappointment. The offense averaged just 30.5 points per game, which is fine on paper, but it's not exactly the explosive standard that Sark established in Austin, right? The saving grace was that by late in the season, Arch Manning looked like a completely different quarterback than he did in September, and he did not look good in September. That's the whole story heading into 2026. If the version of Arch Manning that we saw in November of last year, where he was the number 1 QBR quarterback in the country, if that's the version that Texas gets for the full season, the Longhorns are going to be a problem for everybody. The arm talent is obvious. His ability to push the ball vertically changes how defenses have to play. Unlike a lot of quarterbacks who rely on volume and efficiency, Manning can flip a game with 2 or 3 throws. That is a rare quality. But what makes the offense potentially elite is what's around him. Ryan Wingo is back. And then, of course, Texas landed Cam Coleman from Auburn in the portal. Just a massive get there. Coleman gives Sark another big play receiver who can stretch the field and can win some contested catches that also get some more people off of Wingo, right? So you get those two. You got 2 receivers that are capable of creating explosive plays on basically any snap. The run game also got upgraded. They brought in Raleek Brown from Arizona State, and they got Hollywood Smothers from NC State. Both of them bring different skill sets. They give Sark more flexibility than they had a year ago. And the goal, I think, is balance, right? Make defenses defend every part of the field. That makes life easier on Manning. The offensive line still got to prove itself. Texas went into the portal. They added Melvin Siani from Wake Forest, and there's other pieces in place, but, I mean, we've seen this before, right? Talent on paper does not always translate immediately. The line has to gel. If it doesn't, those explosive plays take longer to develop. You're asking your quarterback to solve too many problems by himself. Defensively, the biggest story is not who's playing, it's who's calling it. Pete Kwiatkowski is out. Will Muschamp comes in. And that's a pretty significant change. Muschamp doesn't sit back and react. His defenses are aggressive. They're built around pressure, man coverage, physicality. He wants to dictate the terms. And when you look at the personnel, you can understand why Texas made this move, even if it never seemed like the defense was the problem at Texas, right? Like, Pete did a great job. But if you're wanting to revamp the way that you do things, this makes sense. On defense, it starts with Colin Simmons. There's a real argument Simmons is the best defensive player in college football right now. He's the kind of pass rusher who can wreck an entire game plan by himself, and Muschamp's system is going to let him do exactly that. The front seven, they added Rasheem Biles from Pitt, Justin Cryer from Florida State to complement T. Anthony Smith, and others that are already in that room. The concern is the secondary. Anthony Hill's gone, Michael Taff is gone, Malik Muhammad is gone. You're not going to be able to replace those guys easily. Jelani McDonald is back as a leader of this group, but the rest of them have got to develop fast. I mean, Muschamp's defense puts secondary in man coverage and asks them to hold up, and the whole defense kind of revolves around that. It's all based on that. If they struggle to adjust, the defense is going to get exposed, and you'll probably see that in week 2, right? I mean, the schedule sets up. You get Texas State to open, and then week 2, Ohio State comes to Austin. That is a playoff caliber game before conference play even gets started. And then, as we go on, you got road trips to Tennessee, road trip to LSU later in the season, 2 of the hardest environments in college football. You got Missouri, A&M, and then others fill out that back half. But what's interesting is Texas does not play Georgia. They don't play Alabama. That's a real scheduling advantage compared to most of the other SEC contenders. The challenge is the lack of breathing room. Right after the bye in week 5, there's an 8-game stretch to finish the season with no breaks. That's where championship teams have to separate themselves, and they're going to be doing it for 8 straight weeks. You play Tennessee bye week, and then Oklahoma, Florida, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Missouri, LSU, Arkansas, A&M. I mean, that is brutal. Absolutely brutal. The ceiling is 12-0. If Arch plays at a Heisman level, if the line comes together and the secondary handles the whole Muschamp transition, I mean, there's all the talent in the world to go 12-0 here, even with the schedule. On the other side, the floor is still pretty high. I mean, with this roster, 9-3 is probably the floor, barring a pretty significant injury situation. My most likely outcome here is 10-2. Win total sits at 9.5. I lean over, not aggressively, but I do lean over. I mean, it's the most complete roster that Sark has had since he arrived in Austin, and I believe that he is a good head coach. They've got the quarterback in place. The playmakers are in place. The pass rush looks elite. The schedule, while challenging, they avoid 2 of the SEC's biggest landmines and the team that they've had the most problems with, which is Georgia. At some point, Texas has got to stop being the team that we're projecting and become the team that actually delivers. And this feels like the year that could end up happening. The best way to describe this team heading into 26 is pretty simple. This is an all-in championship roster build around Arch Manning. Anything short of a playoff run, it won't just feel like a missed opportunity. This will feel like a massive disappointment, and there's going to be real questions around Sark as the head coach if they can't make the CFP with this roster. All right, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to Winning Cures Everything, whether that's on podcast or on YouTube. And then, of course, jump in the comments with your thoughts on all these different teams. Penn State, A&M, Alabama, Georgia, and Texas. Y'all know I love talking ball with you. I love talking ball. I don't want to get into all the politics and all that kind of stuff. But maybe we'll talk about this 24 team nonsense and the super leagues and blah, 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 blah. Maybe we'll talk about that as we get into late June, something like that. I think that might be a good time. All right, let's get out of here. We went a little shorter this time. I tried to make them a little more concise. But subscribe if you haven't subscribed. We'll do that. Till next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other. God bless college football, and hopefully all of your tickets cash this week.
Thanks for listening to Winning Cures Everything. Subscribe, leave a review or comment, follow @GaryWCE on X, and check out the web store,